Welcome to The Thriving Marriage, the podcast for those who want to get their spouse back in love with them and truly thrive.
You'll learn why 95% of people don't save their marriage and the secret method no one else is talking about that will change everything for you. Are you ready? Let's turn tragedy to triumph.
Here are your hosts, international marriage experts, Mark Johnston and Heather Choate.
Have a guest on the podcast today. We have with us Haley. Haley, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Tired, but good.
Yeah, you were just mentioning before we got started here, you mentioned that you're a bit sick, and I saw your son in the background. I can only imagine with everything.
Yeah, it's very difficult.
All right, so Haley, you have graciously agreed to talk about some of your experiences here, what's going on with some issues here with your marriage. And these sort of opportunities are always great to see how at least some of the principles, some of what goes on, some of what we talk about actually works. So before we get into that a bit more, do you mind telling me a little bit about you and your husband?
We got married super quick. We're married 3 years before we got divorced, and then got back together about 6 months later. He has 2 kids with 2 different women from before we got married. Okay. And that one of the big issues in our relationship is he was so used to bowing down to them. Mm-hmm. That like it didn't work once we were married and had our own kid. Like it just, you can't give everybody everything that they want.
So it sounds like there's a lot of issues with your husband even before the marriage started, things that he had experienced in other relationships that he was really pulling into your own here.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that sort of issue where he felt like he had to give in quite a bit. What kind of problems did he start to see? You mentioned you got divorced and they got back together. There must have been some problems, and yeah.
His daughter's mom had told us that she and him had an affair. And he was like, no, it didn't happen. It didn't happen. She was like, yes, it did. Yes, it did. Yes, it did. And so for a while, I chose to believe him. Okay. And then I saw a bunch of text messages that were between the 2 of them. Later to find out that it was all fabricated by his daughter's mom because she didn't want him married.
Wow.
Yeah.
So there was a lot, sounds like a lot of drama going on between, say, you, your husband, this ex, and that. So how did you react to that? I mean, you saw all these messages. You said that you were believing your husband for a while, and then you saw these text messages. I mean, I'm still curious, like how this is all playing out, because it sounds like if you saw that it was all fabricated, everything should have been just fine at that point.
It took about 5 months for me to figure out that they were fabricated because I'm actually friends with his daughter's mom now.
Okay.
And we were drinking and she was finally admitted that like nothing had happened. If she's sober, she still will say, we slept together, he cheated on you. But as soon as she's intoxicated, she's like, no, it never happened. I just didn't want you guys together. And so when that happened, I decided to have a conversation with him. And he was like, well, you already left me. So if I cheated on you, I would have told you by now. Like I already lost you.
Yeah.
And so then I decided to work on things with him, which is when we started High Thrive coaching. And our communication got better. And I decided to just let it go, whether or not they actually slept together, I'll never know the truth. Like, there's no way that I could ever know for a fact that that happened. So I decided to just let it go and see if we could work things out for my son, for me. Like, I still love him. And it's been going very well since I started High Thrive. I also went inpatient for a month to work on my mental health, which also did wonders for us.
Was it always obvious that your circumstances, your relationship would actually improve?
Yeah, I think that I had just marked it up to, well, we have a kid now, so like we have to make it work. I had threatened to leave multiple times when we lived in Washington. We moved back to Utah when my son was about 6 months old. And that's when things went downhill because his daughter's mom also moved here. And we just, like, things were not getting better. They were getting worse. And
well, what about your husband here? I mean, I imagine you had left. I mean, you said, okay, this is over. You said the divorce actually went through. I imagine somewhere in here, your husband may have had some doubts, or may have had some problems with getting back together, possibly.
Yeah, he actually had a girlfriend for the 6 months we were separated.
I'm sure that complicated things quite a bit in trying to put your marriage back together.
Yeah, and he hid her from me for the first like 3 months. I didn't know that she existed. And then, like, he wouldn't make a choice. He would like message me and be like, I love you, and I was like, well, you have a girlfriend. Like, we can't work on us if you have a girlfriend. And then he was like, well, how do I know you're not going to leave me again? Because we actually had a domestic dispute in August. Then I saw the text messages. His daughter's mom escalated a fight that got violent. If she had not been here, it would not have turned violent because our fights never did. And the courts actually made him move back to Washington. And they had actually not really given me a choice about the divorce. They had said that if I didn't divorce him, he would be charged with a felony because our daughter's mom had actually lied and said that he choked her. And then once I finally got to read the police reports, when supposedly he choked her, he was in a bedroom with me.
Gotcha.
And so at that point, I was like, well, if I don't leave you, like, the court's going to charge you with a felony. So, like, they didn't really give me a choice in the matter.
Well, there's a lot of things that you and your husband went through to make it work. You know, it sounds like you were facing some opposition from his ex, and then him having another girlfriend, and all of these things that were really getting in the way. It almost sounds like this would be a really, really difficult situation to put back together. So what do you think actually made the difference in getting back together with your husband?
His girlfriend actually found out that he was not, Edward, you're okay, was not talking to me as just a friend. And pretty much told him, you can't talk to her anymore. And he's like, she's my son's mom, so that's not an option. And so ultimately she told him, like, you need to make a decision. And when that happened, he decided to pick me, regardless if we work or not. Like, he decided to work on us. And then on May 1st, we made it like official, like we were officially back together. But ultimately it was her saying, either you're gonna like pick me or her.
So essentially there was an ultimatum. There was a point where he had to choose, but he chose you. He chose you even though he was dating this other woman. Why do you think that was? Why do you think, I mean, he was holding on to that relationship. He wasn't letting that go. for, so many months. I'm wondering, is there anything that you did to really make that decision easier?
I don't entirely know. Like, I know that, like, we were working with the coaches on, like, him making a decision as well, because they knew that he had a girlfriend. I think ultimately he knew that if he didn't pick me, like, I wasn't going to wait around forever. Either we were going to try to make it work, or we were just going to let it go. I wasn't going to be that woman that made a man cheat on another woman, when that was ultimately what broke us up in the first place, was the fabrication of the affair. So I know me going impatient also helped, because I needed to figure out a lot of my past trauma so that it didn't seep into our relationship. And so I think ultimately me going impatient, and then him knowing that I wasn't going to wait around.
So you were really taking the your own problems seriously, and he knew that. He could see that you were taking it seriously, that you were trying to take a look at your own problems. But then it sounds like you also had a lot of respect for yourself, letting him know that this wasn't going to stick around forever. So, I mean, it sounds like a combination of, like, drawing him in and letting him know it could be safe, and then having that boundary there.
Yeah. And I've also set boundaries with my daughter's mom, where, like, she can't talk negatively about him around me. She can have her opinions, but she doesn't need to voice them, because either way, she's going to be in our life. So I'm all she has in Utah, because my family's here. Her family's back in Washington. So ultimately, she can't survive without me in my helplessness. And so me setting those boundaries with her were really hard at first, because she, like, pushed back, but she's accepted them now. And I think Nick, seeing me stand up to her instead of letting her manipulate or control me, also showed him that I was serious about changing, because she had gotten so far in my head when we split that, like, I didn't have opinions of my own. Like, I doubted everything. Even the text messages didn't sound like him, and I still was like, well, it has to be him. Like, some of the sexual content that they talked about, like, is not my husband. He's a prude. He won't talk about going to the bathroom. He won't do any of that. And, like, some of those text messages were not him.
But yeah, at some point you let yourself, you convince yourself, okay, but it was, and you took care of that. I imagine that in and of itself was really reassuring for your husband.
Yeah. And then writing, like, letters, and I had slept with a couple people after we got divorced, and he was like, well, I had a girlfriend, but I didn't sleep with her. So that was, like, another hump that we had to get over, because he was like, okay, I had a girlfriend, but, like, sex is intimate, and you went, like, that far. And so we actually worked through that while I was impatient, and I think that helped, because I was processing things, and he knew that it wasn't, like, me being spiteful by telling him. It was, if we're going to make this work, like, we need to put everything on the table and just either let it go or, like, end this now, is kind of where the conversation went. And he took it and was like, I'm upset, but, like, I'm not mad at you. Like, I appreciate you telling me. And then we, like, worked through it. And we're still working through it. I was actually in Washington last week with him, and because he hasn't moved back yet, because he needs to finish some work stuff out there. And things were great until we got in one fight, and it was like we hadn't done any therapy, any coaching, and it took a minute for me to, like get back into my healthy space, because I jumped to, well, you're just going to leave, or you had a girlfriend, or you did this, or you did this. And it ultimately, we got in a fight because my son had ran into the road, and instead of him going towards the kids, he came in to get his shoes first.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, no, like, you go for the kid. Like, he almost got hit by a car. And I was cleaning in the house or whatever, and it took me a minute to let go of my anger so I could think clearly, because I was so mad. But even by the end of that fight, we were back to communicating and opening up and like forgiveness and understanding. Where at the beginning of that fight, I was just like, you're ridiculous. Like,
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like things have really improved between the two of you. So, I mean, I'm just curious, compared to where you were before all of these problems, I'm wondering, because here we have, a divorce, we have accusations of affairs, we have a period where you're both seeing other people. How do you view your relationship now with your husband compared to before all of that?
I feel like it's secure. Like, if he tells me something, I believe him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, right when he broke up with Stephanie, he had still been talking to her and didn't tell me. And I found out because I got notified that he got like an upgrade on his phone. So when I went to his profile, it shows the numbers of like who he contacts and who he calls or whatever. And we actually had a coaching session with High Thrive the next day after that happened. And even that fight, we were able to like communicate and get through. And by the end, he understood like why I was upset that he didn't tell me. And he was like, well, I was helping her with work. And I was like, okay, but you didn't tell me is the issue.
Mm-hmm.
And so since then, he's been completely open about any contact or anything that's going on. Like, his sister called him, and she had somehow had screenshots of our conversations. I'm pretty sure she got into my Facebook because I had to change all my passwords last week because it said that someone in Seattle was on my Facebook. So then we had the drama with her, like, hacking into my Facebook and, like, having her family call Nick. And instead of taking off like I would have, because I'm a runner, we had the conversation, and we both changed our passwords together at the same time. So, like, we knew that they were changed. And
Mm-hmm.
like, she's blocked on all my accounts and she's blocked on all his accounts. And so we just eliminated the drama instead of feeding into it.
You worked through a lot of those problems, and instead of having the argument. And you're saying previously you probably wouldn't have worked through that problem like that.
Oh no, it would have been like a week-long argument that would have kept getting brought up. And I would have like not felt like he was being faithful in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Because he also thinks like a robot. Like, when I found the fabricated messages were on Tumblr, which I didn't even know that you could message on Tumblr. When I confronted him about it, he deleted his Tumblr altogether before I could even look at anything.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't see how that was shady, because in his mind, he's like, well, Tumblr's causing an issue, so I'm going to get rid of it. He didn't think, oh, well, me getting rid of it is going to make her think that I did send those messages because I didn't let her look at my Tumblr. And so...
But it sounds like your husband is listening to you now a little bit more, and is trying to understand how things are impacting you.
Yeah. And he takes it into consideration and doesn't just like go with it. Like, even if he's frustrated, he's comprehending what I'm saying now. Yeah. And how I'm feeling. Where in the past it would have just been like, you're not, like, you're just being crazy, you're paranoid, you're jealous, like,
You would have been
Yeah.
very dismissive of how you were reacting.
Yeah.
So, what piece of advice then would you give to others trying to fix their marriages? I mean, it seems like you've been through the ringer. You've really overcome quite a few obstacles and gotten past a lot of drama. There's some experience there. What kind of advice might you give someone else?
You both have to want it. He wanted me and I wanted him, and I think that's what helped us be able to get past that hump. Is even though the divorce had gone finalized and we were living separately, we had never actually given up on each other. We had never stopped talking. We had never, like, we were still fighting, but like we were still, I miss you, I love you. Like, that's why when I found out he had a girlfriend, I was so upset about it, because I was like, it's like we weren't divorced, like we've been talking like we were still married. But I think we both had to want it, and we both had to be willing to change on our own as well. Like, he's in therapy, I'm in therapy. We both had to really evaluate our situation, but also what toxicity we were bringing to the table. Because all my past relationships, I was cheated on, I like very abusive, and I brought that into our marriage. So I married him without trusting him, and that ultimately was one of the biggest issues. And he had never felt jealousy or anything like that before me, so he didn't know how to handle his emotions. So we both had to want it, but we both had to also accept that, hey, maybe we need a little bit of help outside of the marriage too.
Did you both want things to work at the same time? Because I know a lot of people listening in might be saying, "Oh no, what if my spouse isn't wanting it right now?" So I'm curious. Did you and your husband both? Was it always very clear that you both wanted?
No, he tried after the divorce was finalized to get me back before he moved, and I was just like, no. Like, you're not going to change. I'm not going to change. Like, we're going to keep going back and forth, and it's going to be toxic. It took me a while to see that he was changing, to open myself up to that. Because deep down, I wanted us to work, but I was so scared that I had shut myself down.
So that's really interesting. Like, I'm almost always, when I'm working when I'm talking with people from our group here, it's almost from the other perspective, like where the person I'm talking with wants the relationship and the other person is describing what you're describing right there, like this doubt, this fear that things are going to continue to be toxic. And so what did you say right there? I think that was really important. You said you saw that he was changing, right? Is that what it was?
Yeah, I saw that he was going to therapy. He was doing what he needed to do. He was changing. He was listening to me. And he even was like helping with the kids. Like, my family is very against us getting back together. Because he didn't really help with the kids a lot. He like would miss work, was really selfish, like would play video games over helping me. And even when I was in Washington, he like didn't play video games. He helped with the kids, other than the one like mistake where he grabbed his shoes. Like, he played with them, he interacted with them. Like, he is the person I married now.
Yeah.
And it took me seeing that to be open to trying again. Because I could talk all day with him about how much I missed him, but it still didn't change my thought. I was still like, well, we can never work. Like, this is never going to work out, until I saw change in him. And I had synced my inpatient program months before I finally went. I just didn't have the right insurance.
Gotcha.
And so I had been trying for months, and he was just like, well, you're not trying, like, you're not doing it. And I was like, why do I have to wait for insurance? Like, do you have $1,300 a day for an inpatient facility? I don't think so.
So it really helped you to see that he was trying, and then vice versa. It was really it really provided a lot of assurance once you yourself also were making a lot of effort towards taking care of your own concerns, your own problems.
Yeah, I think one of the issues is a lot of people think like this stigmatism with mental health and going to therapy, and like he was one of those people. Like our entire marriage, I was like, you need therapy, and he's like, no, I don't. Like, you need therapy, I don't. And it took him finally opening up to that idea to get the help that he needed. And then he started seeing strides. Like his therapist was even told him, like, you have to stop putting Haley on a pedestal because you're setting her up for failure. And seeing him change the way that he like looked at things, I knew that we could make it work if we both continued. And even now, like, that's one of my conditions with us being back together is we both have to continue in therapy and continue doing what we need to do for self-care so that we don't get lost again. Or
you're expecting you expect a lot from yourself and from your husband, and that's I think really key here. So we're gonna have to wrap this up, Haley, but any parting thoughts, any last words of wisdom here?
I would just say, if you want it, don't give up, but also take a look at yourself, because there are so many factors in relationships that like you may not even think that something you're doing is a problem until you start therapy. And so I would advise everybody to seek therapy. It doesn't mean you're crazy. It doesn't mean you're messed up. It just, I think everybody needs a little bit of help, especially with this generation with social media, and cheating is more common now. Like, I think that you just need to be open up to all possibilities.
Oh, I mean, I might be a little bit biased here myself, but yeah, I think everyone could benefit.
Yeah.
Of course, that's coming from, it's an everyday part of my life, so that it's just kind of like, okay, well, that's what's needed is an outside perspective here and there. But yeah, I appreciate those thoughts, Haley. Thank you for your time here, and it's great to have you. And it's really big for you to share your story with everyone. So thank you so very much. And for everyone else out there, I'm going to just second what Haley said. If things are really difficult, get some help. It's really good to have an outside perspective. So with that, we will finish up here. Thank you all for listening.
Thanks for listening to The Thriving Marriage, your A to Z blueprint for not just surviving marriage, but thriving. Until next time, my friends, thrive on.